Hey, ambitious dentist, welcome to Start Your Dental Practice, the show for existing and aspiring dentists to take your dental practice to the highest possible level. I'm your host, Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV, founder of dentistmetrics.com. In every episode, we aim to demystify the how to start a dental practice problem by bringing on world-class dentists, influencers, and consultants in the dental industry to pick their brain about how to get past the barriers involved from going from no practice to being a practice owner to owning your own successful dental practice. It turns out many dental practice owners need help getting their retirement plans in order, and that's based off the incredible response we received from SYDP episode number 75 with Tom Zgainer from America's Best 401k. Now, I've received dozens of personal emails from SYDP listeners saying how informative the episode was and how it really helped them to start thinking about their future. And I wanted to have Tom back on the show to dive deeper. So in today's episode, we get a little more technical and we go in depth on everything you need to know about 401ks as a dental practice owner. So here are just a few things you'll learn. The many types of 401k plans and how to decide which one is right for you, how to maximize your retirement opportunities, how to build the habit of saving, and yes, saving is a habit, the differences between a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA, and why some action is better than none when it comes to retirement, as well as a whole lot more. It's a really interesting episode, and it is a little bit more technical, but it is really interesting. So at the end of the episode, you'll also hear about how to get a complimentary look at your current retirement plan with actionable next steps, even regardless of where you are with your retirement plan currently. Now, this was a very popular bonus last time Tom was on the show, so make sure to jump on getting access to this. So be sure to listen all the way end of the episode to find out how to get access to it. So now here's my interview with Mr. Tom Zgainer, part 2. Hello, ambitious dentists. This week, I have with us a continuation, part 2 of the first of the chat with Mr. Tom Zgainer of America's Best 401k. As you may have heard in the last episode, we talked a lot about, we actually talked about the history of investing in the United States. We talked about some kind of horror stories. We talked about my past in sports gambling. We also talked about the Super Bowl and things like that. And the reason we were talking about it is because we recorded that one right when the Super Bowl was going on. We've actually fast forwarded in time a month or two at this point to where we're actually to the point where Tom's business partner, Tony Robbins' new book just hit the presses. And just a day later, it's at like number 2 on Amazon, like all Amazon. So they've been really crushing it there. It's a great new book about a financial roadmap guidebook type thing to be able to make sure that as you're gaining money and assets, you're able to keep that money and grow. And the name of the book is Unshakable, which, Tom says it's a 4-hour read. I look forward to reading it myself whenever I actually find 4 hours to read this phase in my life. I'm sure there's going to be an audio book for all of our podcast audio files out there. It's going to be perfect for you guys. So Tom, thanks so much for coming back on.
You bet. I'm glad to be here. And I just like to add on that point that for every book that's purchased, it provides 50 meals to those that are facing hunger through the largest food bank in the United States, Feeding America. So it really does go to a great cause, and we encourage folks to get a copy for their entire practice.
Yeah, perfect. It'd be a great study club book. I've got a lot of practices that do study clubs, and where they'll take chapters out of books and they'll read them and have a meeting to discuss the different chapters and things like that. So perfect. Fantastic. So guys, the last episode was more of a building kind of a framework, an understanding of, how investments have worked in the past, what the kind of the new age of 401ks are. In this episode, we're going to be talking a little bit more in depth about some of the more technical pieces of it. So this one's going to be, it'll still be conversational, but hopefully be a little bit more educational to clear up some, some of the the odd things about 401ks that I know so many people out there have questions on, and maybe they've seen some of these terms be used in the past. Maybe we even said them on the past podcast, and you maybe didn't hear the definition or what's a part of it and why it affects you, what you need to know about it. Then we're going to talk about that kind of stuff today. So that sound like a plan, Tom?
Sounds like a great plan.
Great. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about and follow up on in this episode was really helping the people out there understand when is the right time for a dentist to own a 401k or be adopt a 401k into their lives.
Sure. I think the bigger question actually is when to start planning for retirement, what that is, because that mechanism might be an IRA. Mm-hmm. It might be a simple plan. If they're a solo practitioner and have no full-time employees, it might be an individual 401k. Or if you've got a full staff that's working full-time, maybe it's a 401k, right? So first of all, you've got a variety of plan types dictated by the situation. And when we're asked this question, and we're asked this question a lot, when is the best time? Well, if we go back to the mathematical consequence of compounding growth, to consider that as a fact. If we've got a person who starts saving from age 25 to 35 and only puts money away for 10 years, and you've got another person who puts money away from 35 to 65 for 30 years, right? And they both put in the same amount, and let's say they both have the same figurative growth rate of 7% per year. Well, the person who started 10 years early will have more money at the end of 40 years than the person who put money away for 30 years, right? So There is a certain advantage of starting as early as possible with whatever you can put away. And I understand early on in the dentist practice, you're paying back your student loans. Maybe you had to go out and get a building. Maybe you're partnering with another dentist for that kind of a building, right? And you've got staff and capital equipment and all these things. That's consuming a lot of capital. You might say, I just can't save. But if we find a way and look at things in parcel things in buckets, where we have our security bucket is one of them, and that is going to be for when our active work life is complete. We want to find a way, some means or another, to start putting money into that bucket. So even if you're not ready for a 401k, IRA if you can, and put away $5,500, right? Mm-hmm. Or if you don't want to pay administration fees for a 401k, then go out and get yourself a simple at Vanguard, right? You can put away at least $12,500 in that plan, and they have no annual administrative fees. Now, there's some handcuffs around simples, when you can open them, when you can get out of them. There's not a ROTH provision. There's not a profit sharing. They're kind of simple plans. That's why they're called simples, right?
Sure.
They don't have as many benefits, but it gets you into the habit of saving. But if you're a dentist that says, you know what, I have the means, I have the income, I have the excess income to start to save, and you want to put away $18,000 a year, which is the limit this year under a 401k plan, and perhaps another 3 or 4% under a safe harbor contribution, and then maybe some additional dollars in a profit sharing plan. Well, in that scenario, if you're under age 50, collectively you can put away $54,000. So we take this on a practice by practice consideration. Questions that we've just talked about, right? What are your current obligations right now? What are the things you have to be most concerned about right now? And that's going to all define whether having a 401k plan at this time makes sense at all. So there's no right answer per se. It's all going to be relative to what your personal situation is at that time, with the one caveat being you should plan on being old. You should plan on 20 to 30 years of active life after your work is complete. And so we've got to have financial resources to sustain ourselves. We can only do that if we start now.
And, you say 20 to 30 years after everything's set, after we're done working. As time progresses, that number gets bigger and bigger. My kids will, I think I read something saying that my kids have a 50-50 chance at this point of being 100. That's that's even longer, that you've got to be able to support yourself for the average people.
It could be longer. It could be longer than the time you actually worked.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. It's
they
insane.
Actually may work 30 years. That's daunting if you think about it in that context. it is not daunting if you start socking money away now in ideally low-cost index funds that aren't getting eaten up by fees over time, that have steady growth over time, and you start to have that balance working for you. Because, look, we're already seeing in recent discussions, is Medicare going to be there, or is it going to be cut? Is Social Security going to be there, or is it going to get cut? Or do these programs get minimized in some measure? It's like the old pension plans when our grandfathers worked in a factory or some mill of some sort, where you expected a company that will take care of you. They'd provide a pension for all those years after your active work, right? Gone from a lot of the vernacular nowadays. So replacing that is what we currently have in Social Security. Well, let's just say it did go away. Then what? So if we assume it could in fact change or go away is the worst case scenario, and then you realize now the onus is on you for accumulating resources, then you better find a way to start saving for those sunny and rainy days that are come to follow.
Absolutely. So to recap what you said about the different options, or I would say, there are other options available, but these are the most standard ones that most people hear about, is that, IRA, mostly for the people that don't have any other type of retirement vehicles, like the traditional or the Roth, whichever it be. $5,500 a year is the maximum you can put in there under, as of 2017. I haven't actually looked at the 2017 limits, if they've changed compared to 2016. I don't think they have. Yeah. But then $12,500 for a simple IRA, and then $18,000 for a 401k. As far as from the employee or the person's deferrals from whatever type of income sources they may have, and then you can add on extra things based off of, like, for the simple IRA, there's like a match, which can be something like, it's either like 2.5% or 3%.
2 or 3%. Yep.
2% or 3% based off of however you set it up. And then there's on the 401k, there's, a plethora of options of be able to get extra money in there, all the way up to, say, $54,000, like you said, of inside of a 401k. Your opportunities can get up to that high as an individual. So, let's kind of walk through those, if you don't mind, of like for a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA that's just those two options. Who typically fits the criteria of using those two options? Is it someone that is not an employer, that doesn't own their own practice, that is, somebody that may even still be in dental school right now? Do you have a kind of like a persona of the people that typically are in that realm, or is that too specific of a question?
No, it is. It's either you have limited income, you're maybe working for somebody that does not offer a retirement plan at your place of employment, right? Or if you're going to school, for example, and you have some part-time work you're doing on the side, well, gosh, if you can start establishing that habit of saving, then you're going to be well on your way to success when you're in your 50s and 60s, right? So it's our parents always said, save for a rainy day. And I kind of take a little bit that, why not expect a lot of stuff, right? Because especially nowadays, in the old days, when you said it's a rainy day, you're cooped up in a house. Well, now on a rainy day, with the advent of the internet and the Amazon and internet shopping, you could do just as much financial damage in the house on a rainy day that you can go out shopping at the mall, right? So it's still going to come down to, when do you start accumulating assets? So an IRA is good at any age to get into the habit of. Or, for example, let's say you have a practice and you have employees, but you just can't afford or don't want to afford, say, the establishment of a 401k plan, which will come with administration fees, and it also may come with employer contributions, and you might not be in position to do that, right? The problem is you can't just offer a 401k plan for yourself. You're full-time, working more than 1,000 hours per year. At some point, at least out into a year, they're going to have to become eligible. So that's a cost consideration you have to adhere to, right? Now, granted, if you start a 401k plan, the first 3 years, you get a $500 tax credit. That's good. That's designed to help offset the cost of setting up a plan for the first time. And 25% of your gross payroll for, say, safe harbor contributions are also business deductions. So your net costs after tax credit and deductions are going to be a lot more palatable than they might first see. Your decision as a dentist to say that is the exchange of me putting away, say, 18,000 bucks worthwhile to offset the cost of maybe $1,600 a year in administrative fees and a few $1,000s in employee contributions? Is that worth it? Well, if you reduce your tax liability and your deferral goes in pre-tax, balance each other out, right? So you have to look at two things. One is the financial viability of doing this, what it really costs you. But the other side of it is, regardless of that cost, you now have X amount of dollars invested that can now enjoy compounded growth over time. And so it's separating things from writing checks and financial obligations today for what tomorrow will build. But that really then comes down to a decision when you can say, I can see both today and I can see both tomorrow. And this is why it makes sense to set up a plan. Sure. But that's where a lot of folks are right in the middle, and that's where they'll go and get themselves a simple. Why? There's generally not a setup fee. There's not an annual administration fee, right? Granted, the limits are lower, $12,500. You don't have a Roth provision. A lot of dentists like to put in that money post-tax because when that balance grows, now it's yours, right? There's no taxation at age 59 and a half. So you can't have a Roth provision. You don't have a profit sharing provision. Starter plan, right? The only thing to be cognizant about with the simple, or actually two things, is if you have one, you start one, and then you find that you really wish you had a 401k in January of a given year. So here we are in February. A company called us this morning and said, we want to switch to you guys. We have a simple, we want to have a 401k now. Well, I had to break the news to them due to something called the exclusive plan rule. They can't have a 401k till next January. And that is after providing notice in the workplace by November 2nd of this year of their intention to switch to a 401k plan in January. Now, this rule makes no sense. It is one of the most frustrating rules we have in our business, because you have people that call you that want to do business with you, and you have to tell them due to this innocuous IRS rule that seems from ages ago, they can't do it, right? So you're hamstrung. So in any month, you need to give that notice by November 2nd, and then you can only start the 401k in January. That's one thing with the simple. The other thing is that if you start a simple, for example, this year, and you want to switch to a 401k, 2 years has to have gone by from the time you first put money away in your simple until you can take it out of there and roll it into your 401k. This is actually a big thing because a lot of folks will go with brokers like an Edward Jones, for example, and they'll get a simple plan, and they don't even realize that the money that they're putting into the simple plan each pay period might have a 2, 3, 4, or 5% load on all new money. Think about it. Somebody taking right off the top a commission from 2 to 5%. Okay. So the problem then is now you have very expensive investments for your simple 401k plan. 2 years has to go by from the time each individual put money into their simple before it could be rolled out into whatever 401k you set up. So that's something to think about before you go into a simple. Could this ever be a problem? Now, if you go and get a simple, for example, at a Vanguard, where you have no lows and you have low costs, and then down the road you get a 401k plan that uses a similar investment strategy, low cost like that, that's not a bad deal if you leave it behind for a while, right? Nothing's going to go wrong with those monies. So it all comes back to your choices now, who you go with. There'll be times when the market dips a lot really down and they'll say the 401k plan is broken. The 401k plan needs to go away. No, what needs to go away is the bad choice of providers you've made. That's all it is. The structure is the same. So whether you get an IRA, a simple 401k, you want to make sure that the foundation of it is going to be good for you if you have to adjust into the future in your plan design.
Very good. Yeah, that's a very good description of all the cons of a simple IRA in addition to the pros, because a lot of people, like, you know, the way the numbers shake out is, you know, with a 401k, in order to be able to maximize the benefit, you do typically need to have quite a bit of cash to be able to put in, to be able to invest and to save so that you can have more money. Now, the benefit of that is that money, if you have more money you're putting into your retirement, you get to those goals, you know, you get to those sunny day funds a little bit faster because that compounds. If you weight the compounding at the beginning compared to the end, you're going to do just that much better than the other guy. But that's something that we get all the time whenever we're looking at, clients that, want to make that switch from a simple IRA over to a 401k, is that, it will be November 2nd, and we'll say, if this isn't going to be done, you've got to, at that point, it's probably too late, because you got to go contact somebody to be able to do something. So very time sensitive, and that's not well known to people that are signing up for the simple IRA, because they sign up because they're super excited about not having any type of fees, and they can put a little bit more money back, the 12,500 or whatever it is, and then they can get a, if they're like an S corp and they payroll themselves enough money, they can get up to $7,000 more or something like that in there. But but still, it's a heavy load, because then as you increase on your wages, you'll get hit with more self-employment taxes. But anyway, that's a whole nother story, a whole nother episode about talking about the pros and cons of S corps. But as far as the different things we just talked about, just to kind of recap, we talked about the IRAs, the $5,500 a year limits, the simple IRAs with the $12,500 limit, plus the the whatever 3% or 2% that you decide to be able to put into, which goes, if you're an S corp, that goes into your total wages. If you're something like an LLC that is a single member LLC, then that would go against a different calculation with your profit. And then finally, with the 401k, which is what most people believe is the largest retirement vehicle that your practice can have. Now, it's not actually the largest one, but it's what most people believe is the largest one. So we use that's a teaser for a little bit later. But what I want to talk about now, some of the other words we just used in when we're talking about 401k specifically. So we use words such as safe harbor and profit sharing plans, and things like that. Can you explain to people what a safe harbor actually is? Whenever I hear people ask me that, they always assume it has something to do with the Navy. So
let's, I know. Well, it's a safe harbor because it protects the only reason to adopt a safe harbor 401k plan is to protect the deferrals of the ownership or the highly compensated employees. Okay. And by protect, I mean, you put monies away, you expect it to start saving for your future. The last thing you want to do is have that money or any portion of it returned to you. It's designed in 3 buckets. The first bucket is your deferrals. Let's presume you're under age 50 and you can put away up to $18,000. Okay.
And when we're talking about deferrals, you're saying if they have wages,
how much you take out of your wages or K1 income throughout the course of the year. Okay.
And you have that as well as your employees would have that.
Correct. So let's say the doctor puts away $18,000. Okay. Well, at the end of the year, if you do not, we have to take the average deferrals by percentage, okay, of the doctor, and compare that to the average deferrals of his or her staff. So let's say, for example, I make $180,000. I put away 10% of that. That's $18,000, right? Well, let's say on average, my staff, including those who do not participate, because their numbers have to be included in the math, let's say on average they put away 8%. Well, we would pass the compliance test because the spread can only be 2. In this case, it's 10 against 8. So we'll pass the test, meaning that $18,000 I put away is going to stay put away, okay? But let's say conversely, I put away 10% and my staff on average only puts away 4. Well, that's a 6% spread. It can only be 2. The compliance test by 4%. What's going to happen? What does that mean to me? 4% of the monies I put away are going to be returned to me, adding to my income for the next year. Bank as much as I expected to do so. That's pretty much of an annoyance, right? You thought you saved this money and now it's coming back to you because you failed the compliance test. Enter a safe harbor 401k plan. If you adopt a safe harbor 401k plan, this concern goes away because you will automatically pass the compliance testing. Most common forms of contributions. The first is a 3% contribution to all eligible staff, regardless if they put any money away from their own pay. And we really don't like that one, especially if you're adopting a 401k plan for the first time. They have no skin in the game and you're giving them 3% of their base compensation, right? Not so attractive. The more common method we use for our dentist clients is called the basic match. The basic match only goes to those who are eligible and contributing. So let's say Sally is eligible and she puts away nothing. She gets nothing from the doctor. However, if she puts away 1, 2, or 3% of her base pay, she gets that matched. If she puts away 5% or more of her base compensation, she gets a 4% contribution. Okay, so let's say she makes $40,000 a year, right? She's going to get a 4% contribution of $40,000 if she puts away 5% or more of her pay. So the best way to figure out if this makes mathematical sense for anybody is to take your gross payroll of your staff, presume that they were all eligible, and again, we can keep eligibility out for first day of hire out to a year, and then have entry dates, say, for example, be January 1st and July 1st or the first of each quarter. Look at folks who have already been with you for that period of time, and they're going to be eligible. If you take their gross payroll times 4%, that number, that's your high side liability that you could potentially be liable to make as an employer contribution. Now, here the facts are this. Nobody on any dentist staff, we've not seen it at all, hundreds and hundreds of dentists, where the whole staff puts away 5% or more. You're always going to have somebody who opts out, puts away nothing. Right?
I have practices where there's literally 9 staff and 1 person will do it other than the doctor.
Right. And so the benefit is the doctor said, I would have given you up to 4. The fact you didn't take advantage of it is your concern. The safe harbor aspect is now his or her $18,000 that he put away stays put away.
Okay.
That's the only reason you adopt a safe harbor plan. Okay. So that would be like bucket number 2. First bucket is your deferrals. Second bucket is safe harbor. So let's say, for example, a dentist makes, to be simple here, $100,000 a year. And he gets that 4%, so that's $4,000 on top of the 18. Now we're at 22, right? You mentioned $54,000 earlier, right? How the heck do I get another $32,000 into this plan? Discretionary profit sharing most often. And that is where, by some ratio, if you gave yourself that $32,000, you will then have to give in some ratio some amount to your staff. And there's 3 common options. The first is called pro rata. Where everybody gets the same X%. And that's the most expensive one we really don't like, because if you give yourself a 10% contribution, everybody else gets 10%, right? 10% of your base comp. No doctor wants to do that for staff. The second option is called integrated with Social Security. That's where only those who earn over and above $120,000 a year contribution. We don't see that formula used a lot. The most common formula we use is called new comparability, age-weighted, cross-tested. There's different names for it. And this is where we put the dentist in one group and the staff all in one other total group or individual groups. The idea being is to use allowable discrimination to give the lion's share of the profit sharing by percentage to the dentist as opposed to staff. This type of plan design is going to start to work best when the dentist is 40 plus, maybe age 45 plus, and staff is all or mostly all younger than the dentist. That is because you can skew the contributions to those who have lesser years left to their ages of retirement. Okay? So we'll often see dentists who will go along and set up a plan, and for the first 5, 6, 7 years, simply do a 401k with a safe harbor. Because the demographic mix doesn't work in their favor, because ideally, we want to see where 83 to 85% plus of the total contributions go to the dentist. So in that case, it's 17, 15% to staff. That's when the ratio starts to get attractive from a financial perspective. If in the case, if the dentist is getting 65%, staff is getting 35, goodness gracious, we would say, don't even do this profit sharing. There's not really a great advantage for you just yet, right? So the options are either wait till you get older or start getting your staff younger to have the plan design work in your favor.
That's great. Yeah, that's a very good explanation. Yeah, I'm furiously writing notes for my own because I've seen these things, I've heard these things on 401ks and the profit sharing plans, and There's a lot of different ways that people have those things out there. So for the people that are under 40 to 45, is it typically the everyone gets a percentage if it does get put in there, or how does that work?
So there's a couple of things here. It's all going to be based upon your demographics. There's no, literally we take for every plan, we get a census, hire dates, birth dates, wages, and we run unique illustrations on that demographic, right? So it's hard to project the averages or anything like that. It's really going to be a standalone for each case scenario. And it'll jump off the page whether you should even consider profit sharing or not. Now, profit sharing is discretionary. So even if the numbers look good or bad, you are not required to make that contribution in a given year. So that's what we're doing for all of our clients now. They've completed 2016. We have the annual wages for the staffs. We're rerunning all the illustrations we did last year to see how the demographics have changed, to show if the dentist gives him or herself this much, this is how much they'll have to give to staff. Now, there's a couple of things that buffer that amount you have to give to staff. One is to use a long vesting schedule. So let's say we use a 5-year vesting schedule, and Tom gets $1,000 in profit sharing this year, and I leave the practice in a year. I only take $200 with me. The other $800 comes back into the plan that I could use for future contributions or to pay for administrative expenses. It goes into what's called an ERISA bucket, money. And so that's a pretty good thing, because if you had turnover, which turnover is a double-edged sword. If you have somebody who stays there for 5 years, ostensibly he or she is helping your practice grow and become more profitable. That's a good thing.
Sure.
Over 5 years, they really earned that $1,000, right? But for those who are in the plan, don't work out so good and turn over, and you had to give them some money, it's not as though that $1,000 is lost, because they're only taking what they vested, right? So it helps the number get a little bit more palatable. And in addition, you still had that business deduction in the year you gave it. So that's a kind of a double good thing. So we have to look at each plan individually to determine when this tipping point starts to make sense. So if I looked at our many hundreds of dentist clients, and if I took a mental snapshot of what they're doing, the guys that are under age 40, for the most part, are just doing 401k with Safe Harbor. The ones that are beyond 45, for the most part, are putting some amount of profit sharing into the plan as well. They might not also be taking themselves all the way up to the limit of 54. Because in the example we used before, 18,000 plus 4,000 Safe Harbor left another 32,000 to 54,000, right? You don't have to put that whole 32 in. You might just say, hey, Tom, if I give myself 20, how much do I have to give to staff? So we massage the illustrations to meet their needs.
Perfect. Yeah. And so as far as from that illustration, assume that, we'll assume that the doctor had 100,000 in income and the other staff, it's, say 150,000. The numbers might come up to be, they're trying to get $10,000 more in, be 10%, 10%. I guess I'd owe 25,000 if you did the worst, the first one, which was the flat rate one. And then after that, if it's the weighted one, if it was a better mix of age demographics and things like that, that could probably be flip-flopped in some way. So what you're saying, and this is the part that I want to kind of hammer home with people, is that the money that you're giving for the employee portion, the vesting is, if they don't stay on with you, they don't get the money as that you give them. And
from that given year's contribution.
Correct.
Right? So if I get $1,000 this year, and I have to have 5 years have to go by, I left the practice in 5 years, I get to take 1,000. But if I left in a year, it's 200. I left in 2 years, it's 400, right? So that carrot is always hanging out there.
Perfect.
Make sense?
So,
and that's part of the factoring into whether profit sharing makes sense, because it's great on paper for them. It's a tax deduction for you, but it truly does have to be earned in some 5-6 year period.
Sure. And so a way that is, also combated is by, if a lot of people are S corps nowadays, is that they payroll themselves more. So rather than payrolling themselves 100,000, they'll payroll themselves the IRS limit for profit share for 401k payment. So if they payroll themselves $265,000 rather than $100,000, and they still have that 4%, Well, now it's not $4,000 they get to put in. Now it's something like $10,000 they got to put in.
Agreed. And what else did that do for you now? Now that just made the profit sharing bucket smaller, you have to fund as well, right? So this is where a lot of accounting goes into the play, where a lot of dentists will say, hey, I spoke to my CPA and I know I get paid $100,000 that I could pay myself $200,000. Run the numbers that way too, right? That's the massaging in the plan design.
Right. And that's where you've got to be able to speak with your CPA about these types of things, because that 265, the exact example we said before, if it was you payrolled yourself 100,000 and your staff made 150,000, you went with 10%, that'd be 10,000 for you, 15,000 for the staff. If you do 265,000 in wages and you do 10%, now you're able to put in 26,500 and your staff is doing 15,000 that's because my mind can't do the math on the more optimal of the ones that you just said to do. My head can only do the one that was the one where everyone gets the same percentage through conversation. But that could be weighted even better if someone does fall into those favorable demographics, like you said, and doing that analysis. So,
and I have to say that we have not had a client do a pro rata where everybody gets the same percentage in a long time. In dentistry, hardly ever. In a software company where there's multiple ownership groups, or oftentimes, let's say the owner isn't even participating, you see profit sharing use the same percentage because you're being equal. You're treating all staff equally. But in this case, you've got an owner and staff, 4, 5, 6, 8 people. The idea is to structure the plan design for the owner's benefits, first and foremost. And so that's what we're doing with all of our dentist clients, for sure.
Yeah, what we're trying to illustrate through just how a simple change and like what you payroll yourself can actually make those differences. And
the other thing too, before I forget, is year to year you can't expect the same thing to occur. Meaning, let's say you have Betty who's been with you for a while, and you're 42, and Betty's 59, right? So you're kind of upside down. But then Betty retires, and now you bring in someone who's younger than you. When the staff demographics switch like that, all become younger, and you don't have 1 or 2 people older than you, that's a mental trigger point to rerun illustrations, because the outcome could be far superior in your favor when that happens.
Absolutely.
So you don't want to take last year's fact for this year. If you've had changes in staff, you should always refresh.
Perfect. Makes sense. So, okay. So we have a little bit of a shift with a question here. And something I really want to get into. There is another plan, which most people aren't aware of, that is like a 401k, but at the same time is not like a 401k. And the limit on the 401k, again, like we said, was mid 50,000, 54,000.
54.
So let's say someone is really doing well with their income and they want to put even more in. What is the next plan that we alluded to earlier in the conversation?
Yeah, cash balance plan. So a cash balance plan is technically a defined benefit plan. So we're in the 401k plan, you have employer and employee contributions, meaning I take money out of my pay, I put it in, employer puts in for me or for him or herself, right? You've got the limit of 54K. When you start getting beyond age 45, closer to 50, and you start to say, I actually have the income, I could put more away. What should I do? This is where a defined benefit cash balance plan comes into play. So in the first case, where it's typically participant directed, meaning you choose your own investments, how you want to put things in, the cash balance is more of a pool. And it's a pool because different than your 401k, where you hope the market goes through the roof and you have 15 or 20% gains, in a cash balance plan, we're looking for more of a measured return, 4 to 6% each year. And that's because you don't want to overfund the plan or underfund the plan. But here's the differences. A 401k plan, really, in profit sharing plan, because of its non-discretionary nature in regards to profit sharing contributions, that's more, have flexibility there. The cash balance plan is more of a commitment. When you start one of these, you want to be in a position where you're going to be able to forecast that you can fund it to the degree the plan is designed to fund over a 5-year period. Okay. The beautiful upside of cash balance plans are now maybe you're putting in another $60, $70, $80, $120,000 a year into it and ratcheting your tax liability down $40,000, $70,000 as well. Okay. Now, this is a separate plan. It's combined for the compliance, and depending on the demographics, we will often see where the bulk of the employer contributions to staff goes in the profit sharing plan, and the bulk of their contributions that most benefit themselves shifts over to the cash balance plan. Okay. It's just the way the testing all works. Again, this purely comes down to the census and the demographics, and we illustrate it. But the exciting part about these things is it's one of the rare things that's good about getting old, that these retirement plan designs could really work in your favor, where now you're starting to put away maybe $150,000 to $170,000 and really wrapping down your tax liability. They really offer some exciting possibilities. You just have to be cognizant. You've got to be willing to commit to this. The IRS wants you to head into it with a 5-year commitment to fund it for sure. And can you tweak it? Yes. Can you freeze it? Yes. But it's not really the preferred methodology when you get to that point.
Sure. So who is the demographic of a dentist that we have? Because we have a lot of different, variety of demographics of people listening right now. What is the demographic that a cash balance plan makes sense?
Dentist age 45 plus as a general rule. Staff absolutely younger than him or her. Almost, if maybe there's one person not, but for the most part, yes, there is.
And that's simply because of the math involved with the calculations, right?
Correct. The ability to fund it starts to rapidly escalate north to 60.
Perfect. So
I mean, I have a couple clients that are like 37, 38. They have cash balance plans. They're putting in modest amounts of funding, but these are all folks that are already forward thinking. Mm-hmm. They're knowing that this plan will get better and better and better for them in each 5-year increment. And they want to start socking it away as early as they can because they're anticipated stopping practicing dentistry in their mid-50s, right? And so they're planning for that kind of a future. It all comes into what your long-term career aspirations are, or how long you intend to work, and come into play as well.
So so if you didn't know the existence of cash balance plans, now you do. Very good explanation. Thanks for letting our listeners know about that. And you explained it to where I even learned a few things. One thing that before we're coming up to the end of the hour, I want to get into this because I think it's really important for our people to hear this. There are some, so in the not so distant past, and I've got some people doing yard work outside the office apparently, so hopefully that doesn't come up on the recording. So there was a change to the laws that was covering people that handled investments for people. We talked about it a little bit in the last episode about the word fiduciaries. Yeah. And the fiduciaries basically said, like, how you explained that was that a fiduciary is someone who has to put the client's interest in front of theirs. Right. You said as of April 1st, that's going to change. How is it going to change, and how does it impact our dentist?
Yep. So April 1st, there was expected to be the launch of the new financial fiduciary, where essentially, if you think of in benefits from investments, you've got brokers who are technically called registered representatives, who typically get paid by commissions and who work for the house being Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, where they're selling products, keywords, or you have a registered investment advisor who is agnostic to the actual investments because they're not paid from them. They're paid on top of some professional services fees, right? So when you act as a fiduciary, you're putting their interests first, meaning case has to be for the sole benefit of its participants. Well, on April 1st, the waters were about to get muddied, where the Department of Labor rule that was enacted and put into place last year stated that all advisors had to become fiduciary and all advisors had to put their client's best interest first. The wackiest part of it is the fact that I've even had to say that sentence, that somebody that you're entrusting with your money should put your interest first. But as we very well know, it does not work that way. Okay. One of Trump's first executive orders 3 weeks ago was to essentially try to stop this from going into place. And so now it's not going into place. And as of today, March 2nd, the Department of Labor came out with they're expecting to have a 15-day review period and then a 60-day stay for another review period. So it certainly looks like it's off at least 75 days. We believe that it may get put off or rewritten completely, and this could be another 6 months to a year out, if at all.
Okay.
There are enormous pressures being put on the government and now the new administration, lobbyists, serving the financial services industry, somehow trying to suggest that this is a bad thing for them. It'll be harder for them to do their job. And in fact, it'll be more expensive. Well, when you sit on our side of the fence,
that's lunacy.
Who's been a fiduciary from day one, that's why we've changed how the model works in this world, right? Just recognizing it's your money. This is astonishing to hear their arguments on why they can't put their clients' interests first.
We can't put our clients
first. It's quite a double-edged sword.
We can't put our clients first because if we put our clients first, then we won't make enough money. That's basically what we're saying.
Exactly. That's what it really boils down to. That means that then you would have to say, go out and get a low-cost index fund from Vanguard because it's proven over the last 20 years to outperform over the long time versus this actively managed fund that's 15 times the cost, right? Well, no broker is going to say that because it's not, because why? They can't get paid on funds like those. So it's going to flush out a lot of the industry. What's going to happen, right? So the bottom line is this. If you are a business owner and you sponsor a retirement plan, and that plan is through a national payroll company or a broker, please understand you are the sole fiduciary of the plan. It is your legal obligation to ensure the plan is for the sole benefit. And the wacky part is, if you have a broker attached to the plan, Merrill Lynch, Smith Barney, Edward Jones, whoever it might be, and that person is getting 50 to 100 basis points, which is 0.5% or 1%, right? In commissions. They can't, by law, provide advice. They do not reduce your fiduciary liability in any measure, but they're getting paid 0.5% to 1% for doing what exactly? And now they're going to continue to not have to do that for doing what exactly because they don't have to be responsible. It's truly astonishing. On the flip side, it's one of the reasons why our model is escalating so rapidly is because we're at the opposite ends of the earth of that states, yes, you can be a fiduciary, us. Yes, we can remove all your liability the law allows. And yes, we can really ratchet down your fees all at the same time. And you know what? It's a profitable business model for both us and you to do that. So nothing's changing. Nothing's going to change April 1st as we speak. We expect this to be 3 to 9 months out before we actually know what the heck's really going to go on because this administration does not want this law to go into effect.
So as you say, it's your money. So make sure that, you know, whenever whoever is handling that money for you, who they are required to put first, you or themselves. Because
we like to say all the time, there's nothing more important regarding your money than knowing how much you have, where it is, and if where it is invested, what are those investments costing you? And if those costs are lining somebody else's pocket, you have to ask yourself why. Because no broker can be Nostradamus. They can't predict to tomorrow, let alone a year from now, what's going to happen, right? Know that they get paid whether the market goes up or down, but your gains, your growth will be affected by whether the market goes up or down. They never lose. You can.
It's somewhat coincidental that we are speaking at a 50 as we speak right now. The Dow Jones is at an all-time high because so if you and I were to go back in time a month ago, we were to say everything's going up, it's going to go up. We would look like Nostradamus, but that would just be if it had gone down from then. All we could say is, oh, it's just a down market right now. So anyway, we hammered that.
There's always correction. There's always corrections. Winter is always coming. We just don't know when. That's why a sustainable strategy to use just this past week, Okay, on Saturday, Warren Buffett came out with his annual shareholder letter, right? And one of the key comments that he made was that he said the advice he's been given to his friends over the past few years, he believes they've lost over $100 billion by his estimation, simply because they chose not to take to his advice in slashing expenses and reducing in index funds for a large part of your strategy. So if the second wealthiest man in the world suggests you toss away your broker, why would we think in any little town that we live in, this guy we know from church or golf or Little League or Rotary or whatever is going to do better than Warren Buffett? It's just not going to happen. Not going to happen. So take advice from the folks who know. You want to model yourself after the people who know this, right? I'm not going to go learn dentistry from my landscaper. Why not learn wealth management from a billionaire?
Sure. So thanks so much for your time, Tom. Been a very enlightening discussion. I learned a few things that will help me with talking to clients about the different options that they have with their 401ks and explaining kind of the nuances that, as just as a tax guy, not a financial planner, will be helpful. And so thank you for that. And so if anyone wants to reach out, has any questions in regards to what we talked about today, what's a good way for them to be able to be in contact with you or with America's Best 401k?
Yeah, the easiest way is simply Tom Z, TOMZ at americasbest401k.com. You could always go to our website at americasbest401k.com. Right on the first page, it asks who you are. Are you a business owner that wants to have their plan reviewed? Or right in the middle, are you a business owner that's interested in starting a plan for the first time? The unique part of our model is everyone is treated the same. You don't have different fees or different funds or different services because your plan is smaller or larger. We treat everybody alike the way they should be treated.
Perfect.
Okay? It's great to be with you again, Jonathan.
Thanks again. It was fun. A very special thanks to Tom for coming back on the show. Planning for the future is one of the best things you can do to ensure both a successful practice and life. And when it comes to retirement, things can be a little bit tricky. But as you learned on the show, inaction can cost you a lot. So especially if you're young and just starting out. So if there's one episode you take action on this year, make this be one. And as a bonus for today, Tom has generously offered a personalized illustration plan of various retirement options, regardless of where you stand today. So to get that bonus, simply text practice to 33444. Again, that's practice to 33444, or visit startyourdentalpractice.com/bonus if you're outside of the US. You'll also receive updates on the latest episodes of Start Your Dental Practice, helpful tips for owning and running a practice, and promotional opportunities direct to your inbox. So that's it for today's episode, but that doesn't mean that the learning and implementation have to stop there. I've created a free report called The 15 Numbers That Will Make or Break Your Dental Practice. This report has been downloaded over 1,000 times by dental professionals. So if you want your free copy of this report that's going to outline what the most important numbers are in any dental practice, and it also includes how to look at your numbers, how to set goals, has a whole slew of really important information that is the culmination of all of my experience as a dental CPA, then just go to startyourdentalpractice.com/free gift. That is startyourdentalpractice.com/free gift. And so that's it for today, Ambitious Dentist. Again, I'm Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV. I'll see you next week with another world-class practice owner or consultant that will help you start your very own dental practice. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Start Your Dental Practice community. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor and go to startyourdentalpractice.com/iTunes to leave your honest feedback and review on iTunes. It's going to help me create a better experience, a better show, a better podcast for you, the ambitious dentist. Your feedback really does help, regardless if you like the show today or not. If you didn't like the show, let me know, because it's going to help me create a better show and podcast for you. Lastly, if you know of anybody that would benefit from today's episode and today's content, today's guest, please feel free to share with them on social media or through email.